All right. Hello, and welcome to our weekly digital strategy chat brought to you by Denver Data Web. We are a digital strategy company. We help our clients overcome unique challenges with a goals-focused approach to web development, web design, and digital marketing. I'm Sarah Joswiak. I'm the digital marketing analyst at Denver Data Web, and here we have David.
Hi, everybody. David Zonka here, digital strategist at Denver Data Web.
And today we'll be discussing how to improve your pay-per-click ads click-through rate, or CTR. We'll go over the reasons why you want to have a good CTR, some best practices on how to optimize your PPC to get a better CTR, and then some examples of things you can do and maybe some examples of what is not advisable, what you should not be doing. David, let's start with what is click-through rate and why is it important?
Yeah, so we talk about pay-per-click ads. Essentially, these types of online ads, you're paying for every time somebody clicks on the ad. There's different types of pay-per-click ads, and there's different platforms that those are on, whether it's Facebook or Google or Bing's, Microsoft Ads Network. Whenever somebody sees those ads show up, whether it's in search results or on a Facebook platform or somewhere on partner content network websites, and there's a lot to that. But the idea is generally people see those ads, they click on them, and you're paying for each and every one of those clicks. The cost is going to be different every time. Click-through rate is referring to how often people are clicking on those ads versus the amount that those ads are seen. Or impressions. Impressions is the word that's used for how often they're seen. Sometimes people see them more than once, but the main thing is, if say your ad is seen 10 times and it's clicked on once, you have a 10% click-through rate. My math is right there, isn't it? 10%.
Yes.
And that's essentially what click-through rate means.
Awesome. You mentioned that every time someone clicks on it, you get charged, which would mean that having a higher click-through rate means that you are actually also spending more. Why would that be advisable rather than people just seeing it and knowing?
Well, there's some factors, with what actually impacts, at least with Google Ads, what the price per click is going to be. So things like quality score is a factor. And for Google itself, your quality score, one of the things that it tracks to adjust that quality score is your expected click-through rate. And so there is what you would call like a generally expected average click-through rate across like Google specifically as an ad network. Like for search ads, it's approximately 2%. For a display network, it's around 0.1%. Typically, they're much lower because those ads are typically more for like brand awareness types of things. And there's going to be a little bit of difference between different industries. But generally, Google wants you to be trending based on what the averages are that it's pegged, for the ads to be showing up there. And if you're not, well, that's not something that Google really likes. Google wants the ads that are showing up to be performing. For at least, you want them to be performing too as an advertiser. But Google, which has all this inventory, they want your ads to be performing because every time somebody clicks on them, Google makes money. And so if Google is showing a bunch of ads that nobody's clicking on, Google's not making any money. So that's why that impacts your quality score. And Google does this nice thing where if you have a high quality score, so there's some other factors in there, but the thing we're talking about today is mostly click-through rate. If you have a high quality score, so that's for Google, it's on like a scale from like 1 to 10 or something. They may have adjusted that, but generally you want it to be high. And for these things like click-through rate, you want it to be average or above average. Google will make it so that your ads will rank higher for less of a bid. So you have a higher ad rank, which is good for you, which means that you can effectively have a lower bid to have your ads at a higher spot. You compete better. You're essentially saving money. So back to your original question, then, that is a reason why you might want to have a higher click-through rate, despite the fact that you could be spending more money on ads. Now, if you got your ads really well tuned and the endpoint that they get to, like your landing pages and your sales funnel, that's really good too. But just because you're spending more on ads doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, in my point of view. You could be getting more sales. So
I mean, you put them out there so that people click on them. So
yeah,
you're
kind of achieving your goal. Now, this is, we've talked about this in other strategy chats in other places. We'll probably talk about it again, but just very briefly, if the landing pages that those ads are pointing to or your salespeople who are taking those leads that come from it and not really closing on them, well, yeah, I mean, your marketing money is not going to be getting you probably what you want to get out of it, but that's not necessarily the fault of the marketing.
Very true. So, I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, somebody would see it, not click on it, you wouldn't get charged, and it would be free. But what you're saying is that if people aren't clicking on it in the first place, then fewer and fewer people are going to see it to begin with.
Over time, I would say that'd be the case, with Google, because when we factor in that quality score component, that that's actually like a really valid way to look at it. If your quality score decreases, you're going to have to bid higher to make up for that. But it may not be, Google's kind of set their system, and I've read this in various places, that Google doesn't necessarily want to have a system where you can just dump in a huge amount of money into an ad and just dominate everywhere, right? So people who have done a really great job of optimizing their ad copy, their messaging, their keyword targeting, having their landing pages be incredibly relevant to those ads as well. People who put in that effort, they're going to do well. Google knows that just because somebody's pumping a ton of money, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a good experience for its users. Google, I'm cynical on occasion. I admit it, and I can be kind of mean about Google and these other big corporations, but I do believe that Google wants to provide a good experience for their users, because they know if they don't, they're only going to have this crown of like the top search engine for so long before people are like, yeah, I'm not actually getting what I need out of Google. Why would I use it anymore? I don't know. Do you ever watch that movie about Facebook? It came out a few years back.
Yeah, the Social Network.
Yes.
Yes.
It was so interesting to see that kind of background to it, and the kind of conversations that, Mark Zuckerberg purportedly or apparently was having conversations like that, not wanting to have ads on there because, then I think somewhere he might have used like, then it'll be lame, right? And then nobody would use it, Of course, he got over that. I mean, because they're making billions and billions from advertisements on Facebook. So way to go. But it's like, I think there's something to that. If ultimately these ad frameworks, Google search, Facebook, whatever it is, if the users aren't having a good experience with it, they're not going to want to be there, they're not going to use it. And then people aren't going to want to advertise on it. So yeah, it's kind of a tangent, but they're definitely incentivized to make sure it's a good experience. And part of doing that is making sure there aren't terrible ads all over the place. And if you're not getting a high click-through rate or an average click-through rate on your ads, those ad networks are probably thinking, yeah, I mean, there's something wrong with this ad that people don't like, so we're probably going to tank it. Have fun.
Well, that's really interesting. I guess it makes sense. They show the people what they want, and so give the people what they want, and your ads will be shown.
And then everybody makes money.
And then everybody wins, except for the people who don't want to put in the work. But that's the natural progression of that. Well, cool. Can we dive into maybe some suggestions on how to improve your ads? Or yeah, let's do that first.
Yeah, I think there's really three big kind of high level factors, and we can get into like some more, specific like tactical ideas. But when I look at what is going to make an ad perform, actually this kind of mindset can apply to a lot of things in marketing, but I see it as relevancy. How relevant is it? How compelling is the ad? And is it contrasting? And so like when I think of relevancy, there's a lot of things to that. The keywords that you're targeting that are part of the ad, is it relevant to what the person is searching for? Because it's totally possible. We know this, that, you can use some kind of broad, what we use terms like short tail, long tail in terms of keywords, like, more broad sounding, more generalized keyword phrases. It's going to be somewhat relevant to more people. So you get more impressions, you get more exposure and more awareness, of what you're doing with your advertising there. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty, it may not be as focused in on what those people need when they're searching for an answer to their problem than they would like. So they may, they may see the ad, but they may not click on it because it's not really speaking to them about what their actual problem is. Being compelling, well, you can't be blase. You can't be bland. You really want to have something impactful about the ad or the offer or the claim that you're making to really get people's attention.
Yeah.
The amount of real estate that is taken up by ads and the search engine result pages for Google has certainly grown over time.
Yeah.
And even,
Demand generation.
yeah, yeah. So you want people to take notice, and then it's got a contrast. So if they do take notice, you want to make sure that you stand apart from the other people that are
Mhm.
also advertising. They could be very close competitors. They could be doing very similar things. You're offering a similar service or product, and you know if they just can't tell why you or the other, I mean, it's really just kind of it's just a numbers game. If their ad is up more than yours, they probably get more clicks, more sales, product sales, anything.
And that's kind of an interesting time to bring up if you are really just using the keywords in your ad copy and using them in different ways, you may fall into that more like blase uh, approach to creating the ad. And what do they call it? They call it ad fatigue, where
Mm.
if you're looking for something and every ad is the same and it uses the same keywords in the same ways, it gets boring and you can't tell one from the other. And that's why when creating more compelling ad copy, to kind of do it in a way where you make people think. And instead of just saying, we offer this service, explain, I mean, you don't have a whole lot of characters to do it, but when you're explaining why they might want it or relating to them in a way where it's, hey, are you in this situation? Then you can try this. But do you want to speak to that a little bit, like the actual ad copy and how to make that or how to write that
Hmm.
so that it does speak to people on a more personal level, so that it increases your CTR.
Yeah, there's a lot of neat things you can do with that. Some stuff is very like technical, and some of it is more of the nuance with the copy and the language itself, like you're touching on. Which that's the kind of side I really like. You know, when I develop ads, I think everybody who does advertising, who develops ad copy, probably has their own kind of individual or personal approach, that sort of thing. Everybody's got their style. I think for myself, I like to get very, very in tune to the emotions involved. You know, what is it what is it that's really going to strike the person emotionally about what I'm talking about, to get to their core, what are their real pain points. I mean, it's able to speak to pain points like, yeah, people they want to pay as much, so like, hey, our prices are lower. I mean, that's great, but it's like, I like to feel like, what are people's feelings about a thing, this problem that
Yeah.
we're trying to solve, how does it make them feel? Because one of the things I've learned in sales over the years is that, I didn't come up with this, but I love it. It's people will choose to buy based on their emotions. They make that decision emotionally, and then they justify it rationally with logic or something like that. So if you get people in their gut, and how they feel, like, oh yeah, I totally feel like that. These people get me. I want to learn more. I don't know if anybody's ever thought that. I feel like some people have, and I think that's a good way to go. A lot of times I see ads that are just this big cluster of facts about the product and the service. And what you do is like, you know, support 24/7, lower prices, handles all these use cases and things. Like, that's not a bad thing, right? I don't think it's a
Well,
bad thing.
like you were saying, that's the justification for the emotional response. But starting with the emotional response first, that's what you're saying.
I recall, like, there was a like some type of copy I developed is for like a web design based campaign, and I was like, work with a team that'll make you the professional website that you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Deserve, right? That's a very charged word there, right? Because that invokes a lot of feelings in people. Like, I do deserve a great website, don't I? I really do. I want a great website. I deserve one. And
Yeah.
so that's different from just like a bunch of facts about price or delivery or other things. Like, you're reading like some kind of end user license agreement or something, right? Now, sometimes you got to say that stuff. Sometimes you're even required to, right? To, like, review, say those types of things. But if you get to people what they really care about, um, and what they're really feeling, then they're already along for the ride. So that's one way to look at it. What are some other stuff? So, and when you actually some of the more technical things, when you have like the keywords themselves in the titles, the headlines of the ads. So like using Google speak, so the way they're structuring Google ads, like the headline sections or the description sections. I think that the headline sections specifically, like Google will bold those in search results if the keyword that they're searching for, that that person is searching for, is matching the keyword specifically how it's used in the ad. It gets bolded, which is great, right? Because that stands out immediately more than other ads around it. And I mean, I feel like it's a no-brainer. I was like, yeah, you should definitely be using the keywords that you're targeting in your ad, but I don't see that always showing up bold. So, and of course, there is the case that Google, in its wisdom, will. I mean, this is me being kind of sassy again, but Google will make adjustments to show your ad based on close variations of the keyword that it treats as synonyms. Um, so words like we ran into this recently when we were exploring pay-per-click management stuff, right? So advertising and like
Pay-per-click and
pay-per-click.
advertising were seen as synonyms.
Yeah, right. So it's like they're very much not a similar looking word. Like it's not like they're close, but the concept of what the word means, Google thinks based on its algorithm, that's similar enough that people were searching for a similar thing when they input those types of search phrases in, that they might as well show your ad for that too, and that can be a good
Yeah.
thing. But that's probably why there's a lot of cases out there where people don't necessarily have the keyword in their ad that's actually in the search phrase. But that's all saying that if you expand your ad coverage, with your campaigns and ad groups and things like that to cover more different variations on those themes, you're going to get more of that target. Well,
And one thing to note is that as of actually up to a few years ago, ads were excluded from the bolded keyword feature, and it kind of, in a way, made people see your Google ads as made it easier to skip over them. The bolded keywords were only with the organic search results, and I think it was as of maybe even 2 or 3 years ago. Those bolded keywords are bolded in ads results too. So Google has continually made efforts to make your ads, make it obvious that it's an ad from a Google user, but make them a little less conspicuous so that people do still see them and they don't simply like scroll right past them. So that's one of the ways that they've done that.
Hey, for somebody like you, Sarah, who really likes targeted ads, you see, we were talking about that stuff last time. You're like, I really like my ads to be targeted.
You
That's
do.
good, Sarah. I'm going to hold you to. Well, Google's just looking out for you, right? Thanks,
It's
Google.
true. I mean, if it's kind of obvious to say, but sometimes unfortunately I will scroll past the ads. But when you realize that those ads are targeted for what you're searching for, sometimes they have coupon codes in them, sometimes they have special deals, sometimes they have special information for someone who's looking for exactly what you're looking for. So knowing that ahead of time, and then also knowing that the marketers are using that in that way, all of that just leads up to kind of everything that we're saying. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, that's a good one, because you talk about having coupon codes. I mean, that's another big thing you can do, right? Like have the price for the thing in your ad. If that is if that part of your unique selling proposition is like how your price is positioned versus competitors, like it's really attractive or aggressive pricing, show it, because it instantly just means, hey, that's way cheaper than these other guys. Boom, got it, right? Or if you got a really great promotion going on or a seasonal promotion, make sure your ads reflect that, and probably like right up in the headlines even, right? Like don't bury that in the description. Descriptions are great. I love them. But, the headlines they're going to show, and especially the first one. So if that is a big thing that you think is going to help people make the decision on you versus somebody else, like, yeah, that should be right up there.
And then that goes back to one of the things that we can include with creating more captivating ads is having an offer, and having an offer out there in a way that is very clear what it is. It's easy enough to say, like, we have this service, click here to learn more. But if people aren't already ready to click, they're not going to know what that service is. So put it out there, be very transparent and clear about what you're offering, because even just having that in your ad copy is going to make a difference with your CTR, click-through rate. CTR.
Yeah. Clear and transparent. That's a great way to put it. to continue along that line of thinking, simplifying your ad in general. So I admit, this is one of those advertiser personal true confessions, right? Like you get a certain amount of like character limits when you put in the headlines and the description fields for these ads, right? I often try to like use up all of that space. Like
Mhm.
what can I put in here that's going to get as close to that character limit? And that's not always ideal. It's not always necessary. That's not always what's going to be the most optimal thing. And often I go through so many different variations and I just see what works. But I also admit that I often have this weird case where I use just complicated words, not because I'm like, oh, I'm so smart, but I just, like big words. I like to use them. I spent a lot of time as a kid, like studying for the SAT, and like I want to use these words. And then you get into marketing and digital marketing, and you're like, don't use such complex words. Make it more readable, make it more scannable and stuff. And it's a tough battle for me, but it
Sometimes
is.
the words
It does
can
matter.
be eye-catching, though, especially if they're synonyms of keywords.
Yeah, yeah. When we talked about earlier, like the word like deserve, like there's definitely this concept of like power words, emotional words, and they hit you harder. They stand out more. Like, um, we could probably put up a good resource link to this video and on our website. I think we should. That has like some lists of those because whenever we're doing writing blogs or doing content marketing, we like to draw from those because there's just certain words that impact people more rather than words that are just used so much. And yeah, I mean, simplify your ad. Use more of that kind of language that stands out, that hits people a little bit in a nice way, and make it easier to read. Because if people are not sure about what you're actually saying and they're just rereading it, well, chances are they're not going to reread it. They're just going to go on and skim over to something else that just speaks to them better. So simplify is probably a good thing to do.
Absolutely. Um, I kind of mentioned briefly about how just being very blah about what you're writing and just saying the service and what it is and click here now can kind of be a pitfall in writing ad copy. Do we have any other examples of like things that we maybe should not be doing? Maybe even just simply not following Google's rules?
Well, I would definitely avoid overusing abbreviations and acronyms and things like that. I mean, if your ad is very highly targeted to a specific audience, and you can do that, with Facebook very easily, LinkedIn, Google. If you have a certain tier, you can start to really hone that into audiences more. But um, those if that's the case, then those people they just maybe they'll know the acronym, or if it's an acronym that you generally expect like the entire population should know, like I don't know what's it like FBI. Like I can't think of anything else using the acronym FBI other than like the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, right? Like so one like people like, oh yeah, I get that, but like even like the acronym pay per click PPC, there's going to be some folks that are either new to online advertising or they're just trying to start figuring it out and they're like, what does PPC mean? What is that all about? And so we try and catch ourselves doing it all the time. If you overuse abbreviations or acronyms, things like that, people may not understand what you mean, and they're not going to take the time to start like Googling definitions just to click your ad, right?
Yep.
That's just
It's interesting that you say that though, because that also makes me think about when you're targeting in-market audiences or when you're doing social media advertising and you're targeting specific audiences rather than with keywords, um, maybe even targeting audiences that are too in line with what you're doing. We had a situation recently where we were advertising Drupal support on social media, and we automatically just started targeting people with the interest of Drupal. And then we realized before we even put it live, we're like, hey, maybe that's not the best place because they may already know what it is. So it's interesting that you brought up the acronym thing, because if people know what it is, especially for the more nuanced or niche acronyms, it may not be the audience that you want to target in the first place.
yeah. Yeah, it could go either way, right? In marketing and in sales too, you want to speak the language of the people that you're speaking to. They may use different language and maybe insider types of language, ways they speak about it, terms they use. So that's an important thing, because that helps people start to feel like, yeah, they get me. They're one of us. I can trust them. Let's take this to the next step. That's a real thing. Um, but like, like again, Drupal. So Drupal is a content management system. It's very similar in some respects to WordPress and some of these other ones like that. And there's different versions of the software, and they get upgraded. It's kind of like your operating system on your computer. You have to get updates. Well, every now and then you get a big update, and so there's one of those things coming up for the Drupal content management system in the web development space. And there's a lot of developers, web developers out there, programmers who do work in that sort of thing, and they're supporting their own websites or the companies they work for. And I've done a lot of web development in my career, and you use Google a lot to figure out the answers to things. And so in that particular example you brought up, which is a great one, Sarah, there are people who are doing this work themselves. So you might be a web development shop, and you want to advertise that you can help companies update their website to the next level of the platform, right? You can migrate it, upgrade it to the next level. But some other companies have their own teams of people doing that for them, so they don't necessarily need help. But their developers might actually need some help. So they're Googling on how to solve certain problems that they run into. Like, what does this error code mean? And how do I migrate this thing inside the content management system to the new version? They're doing all that. Well, your ads might show up to those people, those developers, if you're targeting to keywords like, this Drupal content management system upgrade and migration, right? And while I unfortunately, like, those developers are probably not going to want to hire you because you'd be replacing their job.
They'd be
Now,
looking for more informational links, not an ad. So they're going to see it, but not click on it.
or they might click on it just the off chance that maybe you have some resources on your website. You never know. There's a lot of things that can happen from that. And it's also possible that that company might actually hire you. I've seen that before. So like, they might hire you simply because they're like, hey, this is kind of over our heads. Can you, give us some consulting to our team, train them, help them get it to the final stretch, right? It's just, it's just not always the case. So the kind of the moral of the story is, make sure you think about the language you use in your ads and how that speaks to the actual audience you're trying to get. And then that audience might include specific types of people within the companies in that audience. So you might be wanting to have a conversation. You want to get your salespeople to talk to the CIO, or the chief information officer, or the chief marketing officer who makes decisions about how much they're investing in their website and getting it upgraded or something like that. You probably don't necessarily want to talk to the web developer that's on their team because they're not making decisions and stuff like that. And those two people could both see your ads, and for different reasons, and they have different goals. So this kind of also goes back to another thing, is the relevancy. Make sure that your ad is geared towards the type of personas or people in the audience that have the ability to act on it in a way that's going to help you, or you can help them, and that language makes sense to them, and it conveys the value of what that ad is speaking to in a way that they get.
So it sounds like a little bit of market research can go a long way with improving not only the quality of your ads, but getting the right people to click on them. So getting a quality CTR from Google's perspective, and also from your own, in a way.
Yeah. We're focusing primarily on CTR today, but this is probably a room for a next time session. Is what happens after the click through, because then it's like you get all those clicks, but are they going where you want?
That sounds like a good one. Also, I think, and we've kind of toyed around with this idea a lot, just doing a chat on targeting in general. We've kind of like danced around the issue in probably like every chat we've done, but I think that would be a good one too.
We can probably squeeze in, maybe one more, in terms of targeting, because that's a good one, to get that click-through rate where you want it. Yeah. So what do you think about negative keywords, Sarah?
That's really important, especially with what we're talking about, like with maybe a keyword that is so general that it appeals to like a variety of different audiences. And if you're not trying to target developers, but you are trying to target the people who are in charge of finding a developer, I can't think of an example of a keyword that would or a negative keyword that would necessarily work there.
I got a good example for you.
Oh,
So
software.
imagine you provide a service that other organizations also provide, but they do it in a somewhat different way. Um,
Mhm.
so let's say some kind of training thing. You provide training of some sort, and there's a lot of other companies out there that provide training. Maybe it's online training for something, but you want people to get that training from you and not from those other people. Well, it's funny when I, doing keyword research for a variety of different companies and products and services out there, and in that particular type of space, I see the cases where brand keywords start showing up and stuff because somebody's looking for information about the online training from so and so's company, right? And so
Yep.
they might have the brand as part of like their search phrase. Well, they're clearly looking for them, right? And not you. Now, here's the thing. I'm not saying that you don't want to have your ads show up in there because there's a really neat strategy you can use, which is show up, when keywords involve your competitors. You can try and, you know, poach their potential customers a little bit. That's a thing, right? But if that's not what you're prepared to do, then you probably want to make sure that's not what you're doing. Because if you're not actually positioning
Exactly.
against them in a way that's actually very well, that's very concerted, it's like, you know, um, like actually call them out or say like, we're way better than these guys. Go with us instead. Like that's kind of mean, but I mean, whatever. It's all fair and love and more in business, right? Something like that. Just be cognizant. That's one example where people are actually searching for something specific, um, or a different variation of something that you don't actually provide. So if it's like shoes, right? If you sell, athletic shoes and not dance shoes, and somebody's actually searching for dance shoes, well, you're probably not going to be able to help them. So having a negative keyword added to for dance shoes or dance, something like that, can rule out that traffic. So hey, you're helping everybody involved, right? You're not paying for the click. They're not going to a website for shoes that they can't get anything at, and win-win.
And then circling that back to CTR, you're not showing up for a search that no one's going to click on you for because they see that you're offering Nikes when they're looking for dance shoes.
Yeah, a lot of people are actually smart, and they may know that well, their ad talks a lot about athletic shoes, and I'm looking for high-end fancy dance shoes. They're probably
Mhm.
not there, even though they showed up. Sometimes people will still click, but a lot of people won't. And so, like you said, yeah, impressions without a click, and your click-through rate plummets.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered a lot today, and it looks like we're actually past the end of our time. So look for our digital strategy chat each week, this time on Fridays. Be sure to check our website at denverdata.com and our YouTube channel, which you can actually now find at denverdata.com/YouTube, which is new. We just did that this week. Also, be sure to like and subscribe this video. Like this video, subscribe to our channel. That's all we have for today, but have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.